Tonight on The ReidOut.
I think there's also a question about why Trump's lawyers apparently were so misleading, potentially lying in the affidavit, saying they returned all the information. And I think, there's a difference between playing a lawyer on TV and actually having good legal counsel.
Ouch. Scathing remarks from Mike Pence's former chief of staff as those very lawyers now claim that Trump's stashing of highly classified documents at Mar-a-Lago is nothing more than a storage dispute. Plus, new reporting tonight from the New York Times on an escalation of the Justice Department's criminal probe of January 6th, including 40 new subpoenas. Also, she's the woman who defeated Sarah Palin in Alaska, giving hope that Democrats can hold on to their House majority. Mary Peltola, who takes her seat in Congress tomorrow, joins me tonight. We begin tonight on the 60th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's historic moonshot speech, announcing his goal of putting a man on the moon and bringing him home. Today, President Joe Biden announced new steps in his own moonshot vision, ending cancer as we know it, a cause he is truly passionate about since the passing of his son, Beau, from the disease.
On the 60th anniversary of his clarion call, we face another inflection point. And together, we can choose to move forward with unity, hope, and optimism. And I believe we can usher in the same unwillingness to postpone, the same national purpose that will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills to end cancer as we know it and even cure cancers once and for all.
And while Biden was busy presidenting, his predecessor surprised everyone today, returning to D.C. looking a bit disheveled, apparently to play golf at his course in Virginia. The golfing field trip comes as Donald Trump's legal team is doubling down on their claims that the twice impeached, disgraced, apparent document thief has every right to the classified stash he held at Mar-a-Lago, and opposing the Justice Department's request for continued access to those 100 or so classified documents seized during the FBI search so that they can continue their investigation. In a filing this morning, Trump's legal team, picking up Marco Rubio's talking points, called this whole situation simply a document storage dispute that has spiraled out of control, claiming the government is wrongfully seeking to criminalize the possession by the 45th president of his own presidential and personal records. Now, as we have told you repeatedly on this show, classified documents do not belong to any president and are, in fact, the property of the United States, especially when they relate to national security affairs. And for the first time in any of their court filings, Trump's legal team is questioning whether the classified documents are even classified at all. They write, the government's stance assumes that if a document is a classification marking, it remains classified, irrespective of any actions taken during President Trump's term in office, and that the government has not proven these records remain classified. That issue is to be determined later. They even have an entire section entitled, "The President Had the Power to Declassify Documents." But you know what's missing? Any actual assertion that Trump did, in fact, declassify anything. I mean, perhaps they have the legal smarts to know that there are criminal penalties if a lawyer lies to a court. And even if everything at Mar-a-Lago was declassified, which it wasn't, that would not change the potential violations of the 3 criminal statutes listed on the FBI search warrant. That is because, wait for it, not only are classified documents America's property, so are all of every president's records. They literally have to request them from the National Archives to put them in their own museums and libraries. So again, all of his theater by Trump and his lawyers is just another attempt to delay, which sure is looking like a looming indictment. And don't take my word for it. Listen to Ty Cobb, who represented Trump during the investigation into the Russia scandal.
What do you think the possibilities are of an indictment of former President Trump?
I think they're very high. Having classified documents, particularly if you are actively using them, could be an offense well worthy of prosecution.
Sure.
Well worthy of prosecution.
Joining me now is Charles Coleman Jr., civil rights attorney, former prosecutor and MSNBC legal analyst, and Harry Litman, former Deputy Assistant Attorney General, LA Times legal columnist and host of the Talking Feds podcast. I'll go in reverse order and just ask you first, Harry Litman, do you agree with Ty Cobb?
Yeah, interestingly, Ty Cobb is saying that the indictment will likely emerge from January 6th. We've been generally sort of separating them out, and people have been focusing on whether the documents themselves would lead to an indictment. But certainly nothing he said today. You put your finger right on the filing where he said, well, the government says they're classified, but how do we know what that means? Of course, that's what it means to classify something, the government says. Or I have this power to declassify, as you say. It screams the question, well, did you or didn't you? The judge is supposed to decide this by Thursday and has not as yet called for a hearing, which would be a pretty obvious step to do. So you can just ask the lawyers, who obviously do, as you say, want to avoid criminal liability. Well, did he or didn't he? How about telling us? As of now, though, it's on the papers, and he's disputed everything, giving her no easy out. She's going to have to decide between two diametrically opposed positions. And
since you served in Maine Justice, yeah. I just have to ask you to clarify for us one more time. I know we've said this over and over on the show, but I would love for you to clarify it. When a president's term ends, under the Presidential Records Act, who owns all their documents? Not just the classified ones, all of them.
Yeah, even when he's there, look, he is Donald Trump, a former president. Another term for that is citizen. That's all he is. He has some access, as you said, with special kinds of procedures, which just show how wrong he is here, to maybe send somebody and be able to take a picture of something. But it's so clear. Really, you've seen nobody anywhere on any side of the aisle dispute the proposition. These are not his. They belong to the country and the people. And that's even leaving aside the small set of very dangerous documents that he now is trifling with.
You know, and Charles Coleman, the challenge here, except for Marco Rubio, who claims it's a storage issue, I don't know of any provision. And listen, I'm a lawyer. I haven't read the Presidential Records Act back to front, but I doubt that it says that presidents are allowed to store their records either at the National Archives or at their house. Right. I doubt that there's anything in the law that says you could store them at the White House and leave them in the National Archives, or you could take them, I don't know, to Bedminster. Like, that isn't a thing. And so I feel like there isn't an argument here. Donald Trump did not have the right to have those records, period. And now we have, and look, we don't know what was in the boxes, but it's not like Trump only goes to Mar-a-Lago. You know, there is this Daily Mail video of him heading off to Bedminster with boxes. We don't know what was in the boxes. We can't say there's anything in there, classified documents or presidential records, but he moves around to different places. Today he's in D.C. in his golf shoes. This guy could go anywhere, and the government, for more than a year, for 18 months, did not have access to the property of the federal government because he took things and hid them. I fail to understand how that is not just an open and obvious crime, putting aside what he did when it came to January 6th.
Well, Joy, I think you're absolutely right. There is not an exception for any of this in the Presidential Records Act, which I have read from front to back, and it doesn't exist. The Trump jury team, or the Trump legal team, rather, is trying to invent in an argument when one does not exist. And that's creative lawyering, and that's being kind in terms of how I'm describing it at best, because you do not have a legal pathway to excuse what we have seen here. Donald Trump has broken the law with the possession of these documents, full stop, period. I think it's important to understand, however, that even if there was a question or a dispute as to his ability to have these documents, the timeline makes very clear that he was in violation of these things and had been informed that he was in violation of these things. And he never, during the course of the back and forth between the National Archives as well as between the Department of Justice prior to the execution of the search warrant, made the argument that either these documents had been declassified or that he had considered these documents his personal property. So because of that, to now come with that sort of argument in front of the judge is not only disingenuous, but it just flies of not having any sort of logic, reason, or base in law or fact.
And, you know, except for in front of this judge. Apparently, this is the one judge in the country who thinks, hey, you know, maybe there is. Harry Limon, let's go to the other thing, because, right, Ty Cobb is sort of blending. And it's sort of, there's so many crimes, potential crimes, I should say, that it's hard to keep track of everything. But January 6th remains extant, right? You do have lots of people, very high-level people in things like the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, who are charged with seditious conspiracy, very important, very difficult crimes. So subpoenaing 40 different Trump allies seems like a pretty significant step for a Justice Department that had been accused by some, and even some annoyed people on the January 6th Commission, of moving really slowly. This does not feel like moving really slowly.
Yeah, I think that accusation has been put to bed. It's not just 40, it's who the 40 are. So they include just a lot of low-level people who were around Trump. Their only value to the government, but it's a huge value, is to be able to say, here's what he did, here's what he said. And by the way, these are not the sort of people who could ever claim attorney-client privilege. They're not attorneys, or even executive privilege. They're really just, there to kind of serve the king, but they have eyes, they have ears, and that makes them very potent witnesses against him. And this question, tell us about what he did and what he said on January 6th itself.